Hey there, welcome to welcome to Live at Five with Marshall. This is my friend Miss Joe Plyman. Joe is a nurse, and she was profoundly involved in the health freedom movement. Probably still is, as far as I can tell. But back when things were really going badly during the whole COVID fiasco, Joe was at the front trying to help people to stand up for their rights. And actually, I'm just going to let her tell her story. She's actually suffered some consequences from that and still won't back down. So, Joe, if I may, I'd just like to turn it over to you. And I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know that our friends here are going to have some questions for you. And I think they already know where I stand on the concept of health liberty and also bodily autonomy. So, why don't you take it, Joe?
Okay. My name is Joe Plyman. I live here in Mount Clair, West Virginia. And I'm not going to go into the whole story because there's a lot of things that I'm dealing with right now. But ultimately, I was terminated from my job as an emergency room nurse at UHC. Like I said, there was a series of events from September of 21 to December of 21 when they walked me out of the hospital. Like I said, I can't go into all the details, and it did not have to do with the COVID vaccine. Even though they did tell me that my COVID vaccine exemption was blank, and then I had to fill out another one, and then they told me I was late, which I wasn't, and then I had to fill out an appeal, and here in the midst of all this, I'm taking care of very sick patients in the ER. So I brought up a lot of safety issues, and then we had some meetings at the Brickside that were on Facebook, and they got copies of some of those. And so they ultimately wanted me gone. And let me start with the story just real quick, Marshall, because I have to do this. When the story actually started when my daughter, who was 34 weeks pregnant, who went through infertility for about 2.5 years, got pregnant. And she was not getting the COVID vaccine. I gave her a lot of information. It's called informed consent, not to get that vaccine. And September, Labor Day weekend, right before our first Brickside meeting, she told me at the pool that she was going to get her vaccine or else she would lose her job. And I literally started calling people. I called the governor, I called the head of West Virginia Medicine, and I called Pfizer. And so that pretty much started the story. And again, I'm not going to go into much more detail because there is some litigation going on right now. So we were just fighting. And then 3 months after I was terminated, they turned me into the nursing board because they ultimately knew that there were some legal issues that were going on. And so about 18 months after they turned me into the board sent me a letter that they wanted to take my license from me. I'm fighting that, so I can't really go into a lot of details with that, but I'm in the midst of a legal battle fighting for my license. Or like I said, I've been a nurse for 42 years. I love the reason why I went into nursing. I still do. I could not bring myself to go back into the our medical system as we know it. So by the grace of God, I was brought to an integrated wellness in Bridgeport, West Virginia, and met some amazing people that we are the best of friends, Dr. Turner and his wife, Cheryl, who they immediately, once they heard my story, hired me as their critical director at the Health Wellness Center. Starting out, I was actually just working at the front desk because they just wanted me to be part of their organization. So I am now strictly working as a nurse a couple days a week. So that's pretty much the gist of my story. I will never give up the fight. The last election of May of 2022, I knew that God wanted me to do something. I just didn't know what it was. And we were at one of our Republican meetings and they said, Joe, you need to run for Board of Education. So it was pretty close to when the election was, but I stepped out and I fought the fight. I fought the fight. And I lost by a little bit over 1,000 votes. And so when it was coming up again, people were calling me, texting me. And so I'm running for Board of Education again. Just want to bring out, I've been attending not all the Board of Education meetings, but you probably all know, but there's some inappropriate materials within our libraries. So I presented that with them and they want to disregard what's going on. There's so much happening within our freedom bills that we have really got to push to get those freedom bills out.
Yep.
So I'm just going to fight. We're going to have a meet and greet at Brookside on March 3rd from 1 to 4. So if you know anybody in the Harrison County area, please message them on Facebook or see if you can get them to that event. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and we'll go forward from that.
Okay. Well, I'd like to throw in there that I intend to be there at the meet and greet at it's at Brookside Grill on Sunday the 3rd. And interestingly enough, a completely separate meet and greet that has been planned for me by a friend of mine named Jeff Maxwell is going to be in the same location at the Brookside Grill on Monday evening. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. If you check my website calendar, you'll see when we'll be there, and I sure would love to see anybody who's going to show up. But I will be there on Sunday, March 3rd, to support Joe and other good candidates in Harrison County. And you know what, Joe? Don't be discouraged, because 1,000 votes in a county-wide race is that's not a huge margin. So
that's why,
especially since you jumped in. Yeah, well, I mean, you jumped in really with very little time to make it happen, and you're doing nothing but standing up for people's rights, and that includes the students. Now, if I may, I would like to talk a little bit about our meetings that we had, where you sort of acted as the MC, the mistress of ceremonies, and you allowed me to speak once or twice, but you were actually the one running the whole show as far as getting speakers up in front of the microphone and controlling their time, because somebody's got to control my time when I'm in front of a microphone. But if I may, I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience with you. And I understand that, your lawyer has probably recommended that you not discuss that at length or go too much into detail. But my memory, and we had, I think, 3 different meetings that you and I were both at.
We did.
Yeah, so 3 different occasions that we were out there discussing the rights of people to determine what sort of medical treatments they want to engage in. And the way that I remember it is, you just constantly spoke about how people, an individual human being has a right to, upon counsel of their medical provider, make their own decisions about their health care. I was, hey, Roger Connolly's here. It's good to see you, sir.
Hi, Roger.
So I was just about to mention Chad Connolly, my friend who's running for Board of Education out in Wood County, and I think he's related to Roger. That's his son, of course, but also he's standing up on the same side of a lot of important issues as Joe. But Joe and I would have these very important discussions about how important it is and how critical it is to our liberty that we be able to decide for ourselves what sort of medical treatments we want to be involved in. Hey, Jennifer, good to see you. So basically, the discussion in each case was about how to ensure that our government didn't allow for mandates. Our government prevented the governor from mandating that we take shots or engage in any sort of a medical treatment that we didn't want to take. And that was the whole of the discussion, the way that I remember it. And we had a lot of speakers, and we had a lot of people who would talk about specific patients they had and what they were dealing with. We had families who'd been separated, although one of them was critically ill and in the hospital. The rest of the family couldn't go visit them. We know of people who actually died under medical care and were not allowed to see their families while they were dying. I think we all understand why those are problems. We also know of people who were compelled to take medical treatments that they didn't want. Some because they were unable, they weren't physically able to respond to actually give their consent for the medical treatment, and others because they simply felt overwhelmed by the pressure laid on them by the medical providers. I think we all understand why these are problems, and the fact that we all have to stand up for each other's rights to decide for ourselves what to do, what medications to take, what treatments to engage in, that sort of thing. So I want to thank Joe for standing up for that. And then also, there was one other thing that was critical to this discussion that Joe was adamant about. And I want you to understand, Joe is a very intelligent, very gracious lady. but she also has a ramrod of steel laid alongside her spine, and she just does not back down. So part of the issue was, I don't know how aware y'all are of this, just in general, but there were a lot of medical providers, people who provide medical treatment, who were fired for deciding for themselves that this treatment was not necessary or even a good idea. And so what we did was we actually forced a special session of the legislature to get this issue dealt with. And of course, Joe, as a medical care provider, as a nurse, you're emergency room nurse, right, Joe?
Correct.
That's what you were doing, right?
Yeah.
So, and you said 42 years as a nurse, so you got a little experience.
Mostly in management. I did long-term care for about 20 years, and then management most of my nursing career. I was in the ER working as a staff nurse for the last 10 years before they walked me out.
Right. Hey, Joe, I want you to look over here at can you see the text messages over here? Michael McGee, who is actually my best friend from high school 100 years ago. Mike is a bigwig in the hospital system down one of the southern states now. And he says, being a director in the medical field, I know quite a few who were let go. So he's just confirming basically what we're talking about. Hey, Mike, it's good to see you, brother. So Mike and I have been through a lot together. He's a good man. But basically, we were not only concerned about patients, but also about medical care providers who were being mistreated, who were being mandated to take treatments that they were not interested in. Director of Biomedical Engineering. Well, Mike, we always knew you were smarter than I am, so that's a pretty cool title. Maybe one day you can tell me what it means. So the idea here is that no one has the right to mandate to anyone else what medical treatment they will receive. They don't have a right to threaten their continuing treatment. So if you go to see a doctor and the doctor says, well, you need to have a lobotomy, and you say, well, I would prefer to have any treatment short of a lobotomy or other than a lobotomy that might actually help me. Now, just for the record, I've actually had lobotomies recommended for me, not by doctors, but by people I knew. But you have a right to say, no, thank you. And then if the doctor just says, well, this is the recommended treatment and you're going to take it or I'm going to throw you out of the hospital, well, there's a problem there. But also, if you are working in the medical care field in the industry and you say, hey, I think this is a really bad idea. I think this treatment it's untested. I don't have any faith in it, and I would prefer to forego it. Your employer doesn't have the right to demand that you engage in an untested medical treatment. Now, just for the record, the military gave me all kinds of shots. I was in the Army for 20 years. Everybody knows that. I took shots. I couldn't even tell you all the shots that I took. Probably not wise. I'm not saying it was a good idea. I'm just saying that they shot me up with all kinds of stuff. And Lord knows what I've got floating around in my blood right now. But the thing is that the difference between those inoculations or those vaccinations that I took, and this one was untested. And it actually is against the law. It is against Uniform Code of Military Justice to compel a soldier or an airman or a Marine or a sailor to take an untested treatment. It's actually against the Geneva Convention. So you have no business doing it. Now, that's all on the medical side. Going back to my area of expertise, all right, which is statesmanship, the government has no right to compel you to do anything with your body. The only time compulsion is acceptable is when you are compelling someone to stop compelling someone to do something. I hope that makes sense. So basically, if Joe wants to make me hand her all the money I have in my pocket, which isn't much, I don't carry much around. But if Joe comes to me and she says, give me all your money or I'm going to hit you in the head with a stick, then it's my job to defend myself, but it's also the state's job to defend my right to not have Joe take my money away, because my money is my private property and I have a right to private property. but it's the state's duty to defend my right. You have a right to decide what to do with your body. It's the state's job to defend that right. The state has no business not only failing to defend that right, but actually breaching that right itself by issuing mandates. Now we can go another step further. The few mandates that the government actually does have the authority to impose on the people, the very few, which are basically mandates that you not engage in depriving someone else of the free exercise of their natural rights. Those few are imposed by we the people via our elected representatives in the legislature, whether it's the state legislature or whether it's the county council or whether it's the U.S. government, the federal government. That legislative process is the way in which we make our will known under the Constitution to the executive branch, which then enforces our will in the form of law. Okay? So even were the government as a body to have the right to make such compulsions would have to be legislated. We, the people, would have to have an engagement in that discussion. There would have to be a free and open discussion about it in the legislature, and then our representatives would have to vote on it publicly, and then it would have to pass on to the chief executive for his signature. What actually happened was the chief executive decided that we all needed to have shots. And for all intents and purposes, he did that because there was money attached to it coming from the federal government. So effectively, what you've got going on here is the federal government is robbing citizens at gunpoint, quite literally. If you don't pay your taxes, what happens? Sooner or later, somebody pulls a gun on you, right? So the federal government robs citizens at gunpoint. Not only that, but actually printed so much money that the little bit of money they had left didn't have as much value anymore, and then offered that as cash bonuses to states and other entities that would then compel their citizens against the Constitution, against the law, against natural law, to engage in something that was detrimental to them or that they had judged to be detrimental to them. That's what's really going on here from a statesmanship perspective. Now, the medical perspective, I don't mess with that. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I will leave that to the medical professionals. But even if it was the best medical treatment in the world, they don't have the right to compel you to take it. All right, Rose says, I haven't had any vaccines other than my childhood vaccines. I didn't have a choice then. It was up to my parents. Why would I take something if I'm not sick? And taking a vaccine makes me sick. Doesn't make sense to me. Well, I'm with you, Rose, obviously. And again, there are two issues you're raising there, Rose. One is that it's not efficacious, that it's actually dangerous. They said they were safe and effective. That was a lie. But that's not even the point I'm arguing, because I don't have the expertise, the knowledge, the education, or the training to speak to that issue. I'm telling you that based on the information that I've seen from people I trust, that was a lie, that they are not efficacious, they are not safe. What I will tell you is, from my perspective, my years of study, my training, education in government operations, that the government simply does not have the authority to tell a citizen to take a medical treatment, no matter how effective it is, how safe it is. All right, let me see here. Christopher Holman says we have the right to determine our own treatment, even if the doesn't recognize it as useful. You know, Christopher, you that's, once again, you have a right to do to your body what you want. Now, you don't have a right to do to someone else's body what you want. They have a right to make their own decisions. And that's exactly the point we're trying to come to here. All right. So, Joe, if you don't mind, I would like to open the floor up. If there is a question or an issue that someone raises that you don't think you should answer or you should respond to, just say that. We all understand that you're under scrutiny right now. And actually, let's let Rose talk about what happened to her husband, Charlie. But Joe, please don't feel pressured to talk about something that's going to get you in trouble. We all want you to be able to handle your case effectively. Okay. So Rose, tell us your story. What's going on here? I know you're going to have to type it out. It's going to take a minute. Whitney says they ushered in remdesivir under the Emergency Use Authorization Act. What can we do to put a stop to them ushering in whatever they want just because there's a crisis? Okay, that is a critical issue, Whitney, and I actually have an answer for that. I think you probably know, as do a lot of my friends, that I actually was an emergency operations planner for the governments of Louisiana and then of Maryland for a number of years. Funny thing is, when I was elected as a delegate in West Virginia, I offered my services onto a special subcommittee that was studying the response to the Elk River flood in 2016, 2017, 2016, I think. And I was told by the then Speaker of the House, Tim Armstead, that I was new, I didn't know anything, and I should sit down, shut up, and do what I was told. Now, I explained to him that I had, for over approximately 15 years, actually been an emergency operations planner in some of the most, in Louisiana after Katrina. And he said, well, you're new. I said, well, I'm a new delegate. That doesn't mean I'm a new human being. I have education, capability, skills, and training that I'd like to place into your hands. And he said, no. So anyway, from my background as emergency operations planner, I can tell you, first of all, that the governor never should have issued an emergency, a declaration of emergency, a declaration of, or a declaration of preparation. That's fine. So he's got 30 days under West Virginia law to prepare for an impending emergency. That was perfectly acceptable. The problem for him, from his perspective, is after 30 days, that automatically ends unless you also declare an emergency. Well, he didn't want to give up his power, his streamlined access to authority and power. So he went ahead and declared an emergency. Well, the thing is, in the emergency operations industry, in the field, in the field of endeavor, an emergency is recognized as something that it's either an ongoing or an imminent situation which presents a credible threat to which actually results in the loss of massive amounts of human life, massive destruction of private property, or destruction of key infrastructure in the district, in the political area that's being covered. So whether that's a state or a county or whatever, but that's what it takes to issue a declaration of emergency. Now, the declaration of preparation or the declaration of what is the word I'm looking for? It's not emergency. It's not an emergency declaration. It's a declaration that says that the government is now preparing for an imminent emergency. That one says it doesn't have to actually be ongoing, but it looks like it's going to be. It's believable that pretty soon you're going to have that problem. So you can declare the 30 days to prepare for the imminent potential emergency, but once the emergency doesn't materialize, you should just end it. And it doesn't mean that you just stand down. It means that you send everybody back to do their regular jobs, and you stay in touch with each other. But by the end of that 30 days, you have a plan worked out to deal with that issue. Well, he just went ahead and declared a state of emergency, which was completely unacceptable. And then the legislature refused to end it. Why? Two reasons. First of all, they were intimidated by the federal government. Secondly, they were being paid by the federal government. The state was receiving funds from the federal government, which of course came out of the pockets of taxpayers all over the United States. Yes, Kelly, West Virginia is a 100% welfare state, meaning beyond the fact that many of the people in the state of West Virginia are dependent on welfare, the state itself is dependent on payments from the federal government. The West Virginia state government, it's kind of funny to me. Recently, you've heard a lot of rants about how wonderful our budgeting process has been in the legislature over the past couple of years because we have extra money. That extra money came from other taxpayers' pockets outside the state of West Virginia. Okay.
Hey, Marshall.
So, yes, ma'am.
You probably know this, but I have a document, and as soon as I have lots of files that I have saved over this pandemic and everything going on. But West Virginia was the highest paid state of all 50 states per COVID death at $474,000.
$474,000.
Yep, absolutely. I'll send it to you later. Highest paid by far.
Sorry, my dog had to get out. So basically what we're saying here is that the state was bribed into compelling you to do things that you didn't want to do, things that were dangerous that you didn't want to do. And then, your employers were bribed and compelled to try to get rid of you because you wouldn't do that. And nothing has really changed. Nothing has really changed. This is the system that we're working with. And look, the fact that they didn't manage to actually, crush all of us under the weight of these, some of us actually stood up and stood against these mandates. You don't really think they're done, do you? I mean, they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep doing this. They're going to do it to your grandchildren. And we have got to end it. Yeah, Whitney says she didn't know that we were the highest paid. Whitney, it's amazing. This state has lived off of federal government money for generations. And a lot of people don't even know that. But every time you hear someone in the West Virginia government talk about how great our economy is, or how great our budgeting system is, or how our legislature is doing great at writing budgets and keeping track of them, it's a lie. It's a lie. And they are able to get by, and they are able to keep getting your votes because they are getting money from the federal government. And they get money from the federal government to make you toe the line. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I'm sorry. We came in here to talk to Joe, and I'm running my mouth.
No, you're
Joe,
good.
You need to do like in the old days and put a timer on me and tell me your time is up. We're talking to somebody else now. So who's got something for Joe? And once again, if it's something that's going to cause her an issue with the legal system, she might have to bypass it. Okay, Rose. Good Lord, Rose. Now, does that sound like any of the things that you saw, that you witnessed?
So I will tell you about personal. I witnessed a lot in the ER, a lot. But my mom lived in Tucson, and we were getting ready to move her to Virginia, just to move her closer anyways. And my sisters did not agree with me in reference to the vaccines, and my mom was fully vaccinated. And she was a very healthy 87-year-old. And when she was still down in Tucson, she collapsed. And you guys have heard about people just collapsing. Died Suddenly is a good example. If you haven't seen Died Suddenly, you've got to watch it. It's a 100% truth. So she collapsed, and I called my sisters and I said, we need to get Mom back to she was going to move to Virginia next to my sister's house. I said, we need to move her now. Like, she needs to get up here now. Something's bad is going to happen. So we made arrangements, and I was the one chosen to go down and get my mom, George, who after my dad passed, she was married to George and the cat. Long story short, I got her safely across the country, flying. One flight was canceled, but we got her back. And within a period of 4 months, she kept on collapsing. She had 2 more episodes that somebody was at my mom's house, it was one of my sister's houses, put her in. Somebody happened to be with her. She ended up, the 3rd time she collapsed, she ended up with a heart issue. She never had any heart issues in the past. She developed hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain. She had to have a shunt placed. My mom was completely alert and oriented through all this. Christmas Day, we got to FaceTime my mom, and she looked great. She was going to have to go to we had to get rid of her house. She had to go to a rehab. Her husband, who was with her, had to move back to his state because he had dementia. And she had a great Christmas. She went back to the facility where she was staying because she kept on collapsing on the commode, or when she was standing, she couldn't even stand at this point by herself. And she collapsed on the commode, and she died that night of Christmas. And I have no doubt, 100% know that vaccine took my mother's life. No doubt.
I'm sorry.
And I have other people that we met through our journey, Marshall, of Deborah, that I met. She calls me probably a week before Josh died, and she asked me for any help. And I said, let me get you with Will. He has some protocols. He has ivermectin. But within that week's time, now, mind you, Josh was a small statue, 47 years old, went into the hospital at Fairmont General, and this is per Deb's story. This is me telling her story. I don't know all the details, but they intubated him when he was alert and oriented. You don't intubate someone alert and oriented. And then they, at some point, shipped him to Ruby Memorial. Nobody at this point could go into the hospital. Nobody could give consent. Nobody could find out what kind of treatment he was getting. Of course, I do know that they sedated him with fentanyl, morphine, put him on remdesivir, and within a week he was dead.
So fentanyl and morphine, how do they affect the body of someone who's fighting off?
When you're putting someone on a vent who's alert and oriented, they have to sedate them so they're not fighting the tube to pull out the tube. And so that was one of their protocols. They would sedate them with fentanyl, morphine, and then they would give them remdesivir. Anybody, and this, now I want to tell you anything I'm saying right now, this is my opinion. And this is me doing my research in reference to remdesivir. But anybody can look up the medication of remdesivir, and it's a very deadly drug that shuts down your major organs. And once you get that medication and your organs are shut down, you die. And I want to know from West Virginia Medicine how many people made it out of the hospital after receiving remdesivir. I mean, that's a good question that someone needs to be asking, because it's a very deadly protocol. You have to understand that in these years of COVID that we went through this pandemic, we never had one person diagnosed with the flu. Yes, you're right, Whitney. It causes kidney failure. We had not one case of the flu. In my 42 years of nursing, that's all we had. It was flu season. This is just another form of flu, and people died of flu, but people also died of COVID. But I'm going to say that the people were dying of COVID where we were treating them with a deadly protocol. So let me read this.
Jason, I'm sorry to hear that. So Jason, did she have kidney issues before she was treated for COVID or before she received the vaccine? Joe, if you want to go ahead and respond to Kelly, that would be fine. I just wanted to ask Jason a question. I'm sure he'll answer it here in a minute.
Her story is just like so many other stories of somebody not having any issues and then developing health issues that they have never ever experienced. Again, Watch died suddenly. It's something to eye-opening of what was going on with these vaccines. I'll just tell you another personal story with my daughter, who I tried to prevent from getting the COVID vaccine. Mila, I told you she was 34 weeks pregnant, but after she had Mila ended up being very delayed. She did not walk until she was 16 or 17 months old. Her speech was delayed. And then when she was at West Virginia Medicine, when she was at the West Virginia daycare where my daughter works at, they actually recorded a videotape of Mila having a silent seizure. Caleb brought her immediately down to our integrated wellness to see Dr. Turner. And Dr. Turner told my daughter that if they cannot deem that this is, something else caused her to have this silent seizure, that you have to deem it as a vaccine injury, because my daughter got the vaccine at 34 weeks and then she breastfed Mila for a whole year, which that vaccine is in the breast milk. Now, mind you, I tried to prevent everything I could to stop my daughter from getting that vaccine. But these doctors, you have to understand, these young kids that are having babies, like their doctor, they trust them to no end that it's safe and effective. So then the last thing that happened with Mila, and she's 2 years old now, is that they had her eyes checked because of all her delays. And her eyes were so bad that they had to give her half the strength of her eyeglasses because it was too strong to start her out at the full strength of her eyeglasses. And you have to understand, these vaccines and all these metals and the aluminums and all this other stuff within these vaccines go straight to your head. and it causes all these neurological deficits. So Mila is actually in 1 to 3, getting speech therapy, physical therapy, and she's doing amazing. I mean, she's walking, she's talking now. But we also detoxed her at the wellness center. So we detoxed her with glutathione, Epsom salt bath, and there was one other thing that we gave her because Dr. Turner said we have got to get these metals out of her body, and that's what we did. We detoxed her. So, I mean, I can tell you story after story.
Well, I actually have a good friend in Peru who had the same experience. Her name is Patsy, and she's married to my good friend Abraham. He's a pastor down there. And of course, you know that I used to live in Peru in the northern jungles, and Abraham was the pastor of the local deaf church, and we worked together quite a bit. But anyway, they had kids, and all their kids were very healthy. And then Patsy was in the middle of the whole COVID fiasco. She was pregnant, and her doctor told her that if she wanted her baby to survive, she would have to take this shot. And of course, she trusted her doctor, and she took the shot. And her youngest, Abraham Jr., named for his father, of course, he's barely responsive. He's, I think, going on 2 years old now. Does that sound right? 2, maybe a little over 2. The last time I was down there was this past summer visiting in Peru, and he was 2 then, I guess. But the thing is, he is barely responsive, can't stand up, can't move himself, barely can look around. And, their other kids are perfectly healthy. And, Patsy has to carry him everywhere. Or when Abraham's around, he carries him. But, and of course, they don't have any of the sort of support that you might find here in the United States for a child with the issues that he has. Mm-hmm. But just heartbreaking. And Patsy said, I didn't want to do it. I thought it was a bad idea. I was pregnant and I didn't want to take the shot. And my doctor told me that if I didn't, my baby would die. So I took the shot.
And that's why they're pressured to do this.
Yes, ma'am. Kelly's got a story there, if you want to respond to that. So Kelly's saying that although her husband just had a nosebleed, which was common to him, that the experience he had was the doctor said, yeah, well, we're accustomed to seeing vaccinated people coming in here bleeding out of, how did she say it? Out of different orifices all the time. That's pretty horrific. Whitney, what did Whitney have to say? Joe, do you want to talk about detox? Whitney's asking about it.
So at the Integrated Wellness that I work at, it's a holistic facility here at Bridgeport. And we had, you would not believe the number of injured people we have that have come in their late 40s. I know of 2 off the top of my head, to the point where they could not even walk. The one is almost to baseline after 2 years of being treated at our facility. And then the other one is much improved. But you have to understand, we also take care of young children that have been injured by vaccines. I mean, critically injured. And so the detox.
You said vaccines plural. You said vaccines plural. So you're not just talking about the mRNA.
No, we're not just talking about the COVID vaccine. Do you all know how many vaccines that our children get here in West Virginia? Does anybody want to guess the number?
Can you give us a number?
I will if somebody wants it. Give me, what do you think?
I don't know. I know it's a lot.
Okay. Because you guys most people, because I asked this trivia question, I like calling it a trivia question. And most
Kelly says 83.
74.
Kelly said 83. Okay.
Well, it might be up to 83. Now, it could have changed in a year, but 74. And West Virginia is one of the 3 highest states with mandates for these vaccines for our children. So we need to talk about all these vaccines. It's not just the COVID. It's all of them.
Now, I was going to mention House Bill 5105, but Kelly beat me to the punch as she usually does.
Yeah.
So House Bill 5105 has passed the House of Delegates, and it's now in the Senate. And Delegate Todd, help me, Kelly, what's Todd's last name? Anyway, a delegate added an amendment which adds a religious exemption. And I can't believe I can't remember Todd's last name. Terrible. Kirby. No,
I have it right here. Hold on. I got to get in the light. Hold on.
Yeah. Not Todd
Longacre. Are you talking about Todd Longacre? Okay.
No, it wasn't Longenaker.
Yeah, but what do you really think it's going to get to the Senate for a vote?
Well, it's already in the Senate.
I know it's
I
in
think
the Senate,
that
but
it's.
will they take it to the floor?
Well, Maroney is the the Senate Health Committee chair, and he seems to be sleeping on it, and that is kind of a joke there. One of my two senators, Craig Blair, is the Senate president, and I think he's probably quashing it. I just want to let Craig Blair know that if he intends to be reelected this year, he's really decreasing his chances by depriving the people of West Virginia of the free exercise of their rights. Whereas Michael Folk, who is his opponent in the primary, really stands up for your rights to make your own health decisions, your own medical decisions. Yeah, Barb got a hold of him. What's Marines? LOL. They're Montanus. Oh man, are you listening from X? That's awesome. Oh, Maroney. Yeah. Hey, you are my buddy on X, aren't you? Yeah, we follow each other on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. So anyway, the thing is, we really need House Bill 5105 to be passed through the Senate.
I've been calling the Senate today.
Without any changes except one that I think we should have, which is where it says the amendment that Todd put in, which said that that you could have a religious exemption. It should also say religious or philosophical. In other words, just it doesn't fit within your philosophy. It's not something the government has a right to do. And the reason for that is because I have a lot of friends who are not religious, who don't necessarily go to church or synagogue, but they still have a right to say, I don't want this. So, if you express your philosophical aversion to doing it, whether you are a Christian or a Jew or, whatever else, you should have the right. You do have the right, and the state should recognize your right to say, keep your hands off of me. Well, this is awesome. All right,
Well,
Jason,
I did. Oh, go ahead.
I did catch what you said earlier about your sister having kidney issues her whole life, but I'm really sorry to hear that she passed, brother. Yes, live every Wednesday at 5, except this past Wednesday when I got here late due to vehicle issues. But yes, sir, every Wednesday right here at 5 o'clock. All right. What were you saying, Joe?
I was just saying, now think about this, because I always go back to the common sense. So being a nurse for 42 years, if we're going to have a law out there in reference to whether or not, to force a vaccine on us, why don't we do that for every medical procedure that is performed on us?
Right.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why?
Well, I can explain to you the arguments that were made in the legislature over that. I can lay them out for you. Now, I don't ascribe to them. I don't agree with them, but I can tell you basically what was argued. This is a public health issue. And so what they're literally saying by making this a public health issue is they're literally saying that our job is to protect the public. In other words, the mass of people, and that they must protect them from individuals who aren't interested in protecting them. And your refusal of their compulsion of a medical treatment that has not been tried, they equate that to you're actually, yeah, right, Whitney. They equate that to you're actually threatening other people's lives by positive action. In other words, you're running around with a gun saying you want other people to die. That's literally the argument behind this, behind saying that you have to take it. Now, Bob, I understand what you're saying as well, but and that's probably part of the actual purpose behind it. I'm talking about the stated purpose. So the stated purpose is that they have to protect the populace. Well, the thing is, and I think I've said this once or twice, government exists for one reason and has only one valid purpose, which is to secure the natural rights of each individual citizen. There is no right of the massive herd. There's the right of each individual citizen. Now, individual citizens exercising their rights might lead to problems for government, but guess what? That's the government's job to deal with those problems. All right. So when I was running emergency operations, you guys probably know that in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, there were some pretty big issues with people who didn't want to leave their houses because they loved their houses, because they'd already ridden out, 20 hurricanes before this one, and they didn't know that the levee was going to break. Nobody knew the levee was going to break, but you get the idea. These people said they wanted to stay home. The government does not have a right. And keep in mind, I was one of the people who wrote Louisiana's new all hazards operations plan after Katrina based on the lessons learned from Katrina. The government does not have a right to come and tell you to get out of your house. What they have a right to do is advise you to leave your home, to go to higher ground, to go to a safer area, provide that safer area, provide transportation to that safer area, and then advise you that if you refuse the offering of help, that there may not be any other help. What they don't have a right to do is kidnap you out of your house, throw you in a boat, take you to high ground, and lock you up in a detention facility to keep you safe. I hope that makes sense. So they have a right to try to provide health measures, as they call them. They have the authority to do that, although I disagree with the way they did it. And I'm going to be straight with you here. I disagree with President Trump's involvement in it too. I was very disappointed in the way President Trump handled this. But they have the authority to attempt to get out in front of a major public health issue by providing an opportunity for people to receive the treatment or the opportunities to get away from it that they need. They don't have the right to compel you. Ever. All right. Here's the thing. It's not illegal to be unvaccinated. Our children just don't get to exercise their constitutional right to a free and efficient education or the activity therein. And how many school employees, teachers, visitors, attendees at sporting events, bus drivers are mandated to have the vaccine? None. Not one. Just your children. It's evil.
It is. It's very evil. That's why I made the decision to run for Board of Education again. I pray that we're going to make change of what's going on within our school systems. And it is evil what they're doing. You have to understand that God gave us our natural immunity. We don't need a vaccine. We have natural immunity through God. That's.
Are you saying that? Are you saying, Joe, that no one would have died of COVID if there had been no treatment? Are you saying no one would have died of the illness?
Well, that's a loaded question.
How many people die each year from the flu? Well, sure, it's a loaded question. I'm asking you because I expect, I believe that you can answer.
Because COVID was the flu. COVID was the flu. We didn't have any flu diagnosis over that period of time with COVID. You can call it what it is. You know what I call it? It's flu-like symptoms, because that's what they were having. They were no sicker than what they were before, but we had these deadly protocols that the hospital was using. And they died. They wanted to say, like, if you got one vaccine and you stopped, that you were unvaccinated. But that was untrue. You got a vaccine. So if you got one and you stopped, they would say that you didn't have any. So if you weren't fully vaccinated, you were considered unvaccinated. And then they wanted to say that it was the unvaccinated people that were dying in the hospital. That's not true. That's false. That's false information. It was the people who were vaccinated. I know of some young 15 to 21-year-olds who got the vaccine, who died of, or they ended up with heart issues. This is true.
Right.
They never had any heart issues. And what about these young people that are dying on the fields and sport events? that are fully vaccinated and just collapsing on the ground, and nobody wants to answer to why they're collapsing, and everybody wants to be quiet about it. It's true.
Okay, we got a couple of I'm hear you, but we got a couple of comments here I'd like to ask if you want to respond to. First of all, Whitney went to the BOE meeting and cited Nuremberg law. I think you mean the Nuremberg trials, if I may, Whitney, to try to fight the mask mandate. And Montanus. I hope you guys know where that account name Montanus comes from. Montani Semper Liberi means mountaineers are always free. So Montani is the plural of Montanus, which means mountaineer. So my buddy here, the mountaineer in Latin. So he says Trump had such a hostile bureaucracy that he was used to instinctually compromising. Brother, I know, I understand what you're saying, but his job was to defend our natural rights. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm just saying I was disappointed. I wish that he had stood up. And I know it was difficult for him. I understand he's been through the ringer 10 or 12 dozen times, but I wish that he had stood up for us. Kelly says, were extreme other health issues otherwise, and probably a paper cut would have killed them. Okay, Kelly, I'm not sure what you're responding to. Are you saying when I asked if people would have died of COVID without the shots? Are you saying that they had comorbidities, like other issues that made them more susceptible to the illness? Oh, to Whitney. Okay.
Yeah, people were best to stay out of the hospital. That's true.
Yeah. Pharma industries do not count people as vaccinated until 2 to 3 weeks after the injection, per Barbara Thomas.
I know they don't count them as being vaccinated unless they take all the boosters.
Unbelievable.
And people they still have it on the TV about getting your booster. Like, why?
Hey, Joe, we are getting close to the end of our time here.
Yeah.
So I would like to give you the last couple of minutes. Would you please tell us if there's a way? Do you have a way that you can receive donations to help pay for your attorney's fees? Also, if you'd like to invite friends once again to go to the meeting on Sunday and explain to them what's going on, and then also how can we support even from other parts of the state? How can we support your run for the Harrison County Board of Education? And go, you got it.
Okay. Well, we do have the event on March 3rd at the Brookside from 1 to 4. We would love to have, if you have anybody in Harrison County, you could join us. Marshall's going to be there supporting us. There's going to be other candidates there, sheriffs, judges, the Board of Education. So they've all been invited. They have the option to go. And then Marshall is also going to be there.
Would you put Brookside's address over here in the text box, please, so folks know where to go? Go ahead, Joe.
And then you can support me. I mean, I can give it to Todd, my email, plibenjoanne@gmail.com. You know, I'm pretty much essentially doing this by myself right now. I jumped in. I will always fight for the children. I think it's the parents' choice on how their kids are taught. We need to bring back basic reading, writing, and arithmetic to our schools and get this indoctrination out of our schools, along with these inappropriate books that they want to deny that's in our schools. I know 100% they are they're in every school around the U.S. And I'm going to fight till the end. I mean, I'm just going to fight until this is all resolved and all the truth comes out, because the truth is coming. And to be honest with you,
yes,
our school system needs to be completely dismantled. Our medical system needs to be dismantled. Our government, our pharmaceutical industry needs to go down. And I think the truth is coming out. So we just have to, pray to God and continue to move forward. And, all this could have been resolved before the vote May 14th for the Board of Education, but I couldn't take that chance. So I'll continue to fight.
And if I may tag on to that, anyone who agrees with what Joe just said, if you're looking for a chief executive or a chief of the executive branch of the West Virginia state government who will stand up for that, my name is Marshall Wilson. I'm your Constitution Party candidate for governor. So I hope y'all got the address for the Brickside Grill that Todd put up just a second ago. For you can go see Joe, and I'll be there visiting and supporting her as well on Sunday, March the 3rd. What time? 1 o'clock, 1 to 3. You said
1 to 4, 1 to 4,
1 to 4
on Sunday.
All right.
And sometime you should
And
have Dr. Turner with the Integrated Wellness. Maybe invite him to one of your shows. He can answer
Please,
a lot of these questions.
Please tell him how to get a hold of me. I'd love to talk with him.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and you said your email address was Plybon, Plybon, Joanne, Joanne.
JOANNE @gmail.com.
Okay.
Todd has it.
Okay. So plybon.joanne@gmail.com.
There it
There
is.
we go. Thanks. All right. Any last parting shots?
Thank you for inviting me on. It was fun.
No, Joe, it was a real pleasure. I love hanging out with you. And I want you to know that I pray constantly that you will come out on top of this situation, because it makes me, I'm very concerned about how things are going to work out for you. Because all you did was stand up and say that people have a right to choose. And the next thing I knew, you were fired and they're trying to take away your nursing license.
Mm-hmm.
So take care of yourself.
And I'm going to fight for that, sir. I had it for 42 years and I'm not giving it up.
42 years. Yeah, you know, Julie was in the Navy for 34 years and they tried to just kick her out. She went from an E1, which is the lowest rank there is, to an 06. She was one rank below an admiral. And they just said, you know what? You don't want to take this shot? We'll just throw you right out on your ear. No benefits or anything. And she fought back and finally was allowed to retire at full rank and privileges, full rank and benefits. But I mean, 34 years of service, and they're just going to throw her away like garbage.
Thank you.
Awesome, Whitney. And thank you all for being here. Miss Joe, God bless you. Stand fast, okay?
I will see you on Sunday. I'm excited.
Yes, ma'am. Looking forward to it.
You too.